32 princesses entered the beast's prison. 32 never came back the same. Some died. Some lost their minds. The ones who survived the night were carried out in silence, eyes wide open, mouths sealed shut, whispering prayers until dawn and refusing to speak of what they saw for the rest of their lives. The 33rd contender was not a princess at all. She was an orphan kitchen maid who was not supposed to be there. She had no title, no silk gown, no crown waiting for her upstairs. She smelled like bread flour and cold stone floors, and the only reason she walked into that chamber was because she was chasing a runaway princess who had bolted through the wrong door. The door locked behind her, and when the beast turned and saw her for the first time, this girl with no power, no name, no reason for being there, he did something that made the entire kingdom question everything they thought they knew about the monster beneath the castle. He dropped to his knees. Comment below where you are listening from and tell me, would you have stayed or would you have screamed? Lena had a rule about doors. Never open the ones you aren't supposed to. Never touch the ones with iron locks. And absolutely, under no circumstances, follow a hysterical princess down a corridor you have never walked before at 2 in the morning with nothing but a half-burned candle and a mop you forgot you were still holding. She had broken all 3 rules before she even realized what was happening. It started, as most disasters in Lena's life did, with someone else's mess. Princess Soriette of the Western Reaches, 17 years old, silk nightgown, more gold rings than fingers, had come screaming out of the east corridor at a volume that could have woken the dead, and probably the soldiers buried in the lower crypts. Lena had been mopping the kitchen corridor when the girl blew past her like a pale silk hurricane, knocking over the bucket, skidding on the wet stone, and slamming through the door at the corridor's end without looking back. "Princess," Lena had called after her. "That's not the way to the guest chambers." But the princess was gone, already past the second bend, already sobbing in a way that meant she had seen something in that chamber below, something that had reached into her chest and rearranged everything it found there. Lena knew she should have let her go. Princess Soriette was not her responsibility. The east corridor was not her assignment. And whatever was making that low, vibrating sound from somewhere beneath the stone floors, like a mountain breathing, was absolutely not something a kitchen orphan needed to investigate at 2 in the morning. She went anyway. Later, she would blame the mop. It was still in her hand when she pushed through the door, and there is something about carrying a mop that makes a person feel invincible in the most foolish possible way. The corridor beyond the door was not like the rest of the castle. Lena had cleaned every hallway in the citadel over the past 3 years. She knew their textures, their smells, the way sound moved through each one. This corridor was different. The stones were older, darker. The torch brackets on the walls were empty, but the passage was not dark. A faint amber light seeped up from below, warm and pulsing like something alive. The stairs appeared at the corridor's end. Stone steps that curved downward in a tight spiral, worn smooth at their centers by years of reluctant feet. Lena looked back over her shoulder. The door she had come through was still there. Open. She could still go back. She could find the princess, escort her to her rooms, change her own wet shoes, and pretend none of this had happened. From below, the breathing sound came again. Low, hollow, rhythmic. She went down the stairs. The chamber at the bottom was vast, far larger than it should have been given the footprint of the castle above. Lena stepped off the last stair and stopped, holding her candle up. The flame guttered sideways as if something in the room were exhaling. Iron bars. That was the first thing she registered. A great cage, spanning the far half of the chamber, forged from black iron so thick the bars were as wide as her forearm. The lock on its gate was the size of her head. And beyond those bars, something moved in the dark. Not something small. Not something she could have dismissed as an animal or a trick of light. Whatever was in that cage was large enough that when it shifted, the amber glow flickering from the floor trembled. "Hello?" Her voice came out embarrassingly small. She cleared her throat. "Is someone down here?" The movement stopped. Then, slowly, with the careful deliberateness of something that had learned to control itself the hard way, the shape in the dark turned toward her. Lena saw eyes first. Gold. Burning. Not reflecting the light but producing it as if something molten lived behind them. Then the shape of a head, massive and dark, covered in fur that was not quite fur. It moved like fur but caught the light like feathers, like shadow given texture. Shoulders broader than the door she had come through. Hands, she could see hands gripping the iron bars that were halfway between human fingers and something ancient, with claws that had carved deep grooves in the stone floor. The beast. She had heard of it, of course. Everyone in the castle had. The creature beneath the citadel. The thing that had swallowed 32 women whole. She had heard the stories the way you hear thunderstorms from inside a house present, but at a distance that makes them almost abstract. There was nothing abstract about it now. The beast looked at her. Really looked, the way something looks when it is not just processing a threat, but genuinely trying to understand what it is seeing. The burning gold eyes traveled over her, her damp apron, her kitchen-worn hands, the mop she was still holding like an idiot, and something in its expression did what Lena had not expected. It shifted. Something vast and exhausted moved behind those eyes, and then the beast lowered itself. Not in the way an animal crouches. Not in the way something prepares to spring. Slowly, with full awareness of what the gesture meant, the creature behind the bars brought itself down, one massive knee connecting with the stone floor, head bowing, those terrible clawed hands releasing the bars. Lena heard a sound behind her. She turned. The door at the top of the stairs, the door she had not checked, had not thought to check, clicked shut. A lock turned. She was standing in the beast's chamber, separated from it by iron bars, holding a mop with no way out. Behind her, from somewhere above, she heard running footsteps, shouting, the distant sound of a door being hammered. "Get her out!" A woman's voice screamed, Princess Soriette, she realized distantly. "You have to get her out." The kitchen girl went inside. "The trial has begun." That voice was cool, formal, slightly bored, a castle official. Once the contender enters the chamber, the rules of the trial apply. She stays until dawn. She's not a contender, she's a servant. She's in the chamber. The trial does not distinguish. The footsteps faded. The shouting faded. Silence fell over the chamber like a burial cloth. Lena turned back to the cage. The beast was still kneeling, still watching her, still burning. She looked at the mop in her hand. She looked at the beast. Then she walked to the nearest wall, sat down with her back against the cold stone, and said the most reasonable thing she could think of. "Well, this is a problem." The beast made a sound. Low, rough, like stone grinding against stone. It might have been a laugh. By the time Lena's heart stopped trying to leave her body through her ribcage, she had catalogued the following. The chamber was cold, but not unbearably so. The amber light was coming from a series of glowing runes carved into the floor around the cage. Her candle was going to burn out within the hour, and the beast had not moved from its kneeling position. That last part was the strangest thing. She had expected it to pace, to snarl, to throw itself at the bars the way the story said it had thrown itself at the other women, relentless, terrifying, the kind of fury that could break stone. Instead, it simply knelt there, watching her with those burning gold eyes, patient as a mountain. "You can stop kneeling," she said finally. "I'm a kitchen maid. Nobody kneels to kitchen maids." The beast did not move. "I mean it. You look uncomfortable, and you're making me uncomfortable," which is a strange thing to say to something that could probably put its head through a wall, but here we are. Something crossed those gold eyes, something almost amused. Slowly, the beast sat back. Not standing, just shifting its weight, settling onto the floor of the cage with a heaviness that shook the stone beneath Lena's boots. It pulled its knees up, looped those massive arms around them, and regarded her with the posture of something that had been waiting a very long time for a reason to stop pacing. "That's better," Lena said. "Now, you are clearly not going to eat me, because if you were, you would have done it already. So we might as well figure out how to get through the next few hours without either of us going insane." The beast watched her. "I'm Lena," she said. I work in the kitchens. I'm down here because I was trying to catch a runaway princess, which in retrospect was an act of pure stupidity that I am still processing. Who are you? Silence. But not the silence of something that couldn't answer. The silence of something choosing whether it was worth the effort. Then, in a voice like gravel and old thunder, so rough with disuse that it sounded like something dragged out of a long-sealed room, Kale. Lena stared. That's a name, she said. The beast Kale tilted his head. One gold eye caught the light. Yes, he said, it is. Somewhere above them the clock tower began to count the hour. 3 chimes, 3 in the morning, 4 hours until dawn. Lena pulled her knees up to her chest, rested her chin on them, and decided that this was either going to be the last night of her life or the most interesting one she had ever lived. She was leaning toward interesting. The candle died at 3:30. Lena did not panic. She had lived in dark kitchens, dark dormitories, dark storage rooms where the other orphans shoved her when they wanted her space on the sleeping mat. Darkness was not her enemy. She simply waited while her eyes adjusted, and gradually the amber glow of the runes carved into the floor took over, washing everything in warm, pulsing gold. It made the beast look different in that light, less terrible, or perhaps equally terrible, but in a way that felt more honest, like something that had stopped pretending to be less than it was. The runes, Lena said, nodding toward the glowing symbols on the floor. What are they for? Across the bars, Kale turned his head toward the markings as if he had stopped seeing them long ago and had to remind himself they were there. Containment, he said. That voice still sounded like it cost him something to use, like a muscle that had atrophied from long disuse. They hold the curse in place. Your curse? Yes. What kind of curse? She paused. You don't have to answer that. The gold eyes moved to her face. That measuring look again, the one she was beginning to recognize, not threat assessment, not predator calculating prey distance. Something older than that. The look of someone deciding whether they can afford to trust. The kind, he said slowly, that takes everything you were and leaves you in between. Lena thought about that. Between what? Between man and beast. Between the person I was and whatever this is. A pause. Neither fully human enough to walk free, neither fully creature enough to stop remembering what it felt like. The words fell into the amber-lit silence with the weight of something that had been carried a long time. How long? She asked quietly. He was still for a long moment. Then, 11 years. Lena did the arithmetic without meaning to. 11 years ago. She had been 6 years old, newly arrived at the castle, small enough that she could hide under the kitchen tables when the head cook was in a temper. She remembered nothing unusual from that time. No stories. No whispers about a prince, no rumors about a curse, as if whatever had happened had been sealed away before anyone could speak of it. What happened 11 years ago? She asked. The beast Kale turned away, not dismissively, the way a person turns away from a window when the view has become too familiar to bear. A betrayal, he said. Whose? Mine. A pause that felt like shifting stone. And someone else's. Lena waited. She had learned in years of invisible kitchen work that silence pulled more answers out of people than questions did. It worked on beasts too. I trusted someone who had already decided that what I was, what I could become, was more dangerous to them than I was useful. His clawed hands, resting on the floor of the cage, flexed slowly. I was given a choice that was not a choice, and when I refused to comply, the curse was the punishment. Who had the power to curse you like this? A long silence. A king, he said, who is very good at making people forget things they were not supposed to remember. Lena's spine went cold. King Alaric. She had served the man's meals for 3 years. She knew the way he liked his eggs. She had seen him declare the trial, had heard his speech about finding a queen brave enough to tame the beast, had watched 32 women walk down those stairs at his invitation while he sat above with his wine and his courtiers and his patient, waiting smile. Not the smile of a man who wanted his beast tamed, the smile of a man who was looking for something specific. Who are you? She asked. Who were you before all this? The gold eyes returned to her. And for the first time since she had come down those stairs, something in them cracked open, something raw and exhausted and achingly, terribly human. "My name," he said, "is Cale Aldrich Morn, and 11 years ago, before a king who calls himself my uncle decided that truth was more dangerous than power, I was the crown prince of Eldoria." The amber light pulsed. The runes glowed. Lena sat very still on the cold stone floor and felt the entire shape of the world she thought she understood rearrange itself around her. She asked him to tell her, not because she was curious, though she was, not because she was afraid and needed distraction, though that was also true. She asked because something in the way he had said those words, Crown Prince of Eldoria, had sounded like the first honest sentence spoken in this castle in a very long time, and she wanted to hear more sentences like it. So he told her. His voice was rough and slow at first, like something that had to find its own shape again, but as he spoke it smoothed, became something that might once have been called measured, careful, the voice, perhaps, of a man who had been trained to speak to courts. He had been King Alaric's nephew, the son of the king's elder brother, who had died in a border war when Cale was 12. By law, by bloodline, by every tradition Eldoria had held for 600 years, Cale should have been first in the line of succession, should have inherited the throne when he came of age at 21. He had been 19 when the curse took him. "What did Alaric want from you?" Lena asked. "An alliance with the southern kingdoms, my signature on a treaty that would have handed him control of the eastern trade routes." Cale's jaw tightened. "In exchange for naming him my regent until I was of age, in exchange for agreeing to step aside." "Step aside from what?" "The throne." His voice was very flat. "He wanted me to agree in writing to renounce my claim, to give him the crown legally, voluntarily, with no challenge from my bloodline. And you refused." "I refused." A pause. He had other options prepared. The curse had not come without warning, he told her. He had heard the stories of an old magic that could be weaponized, could trap a person in a form between human and beast, strip them of their claim, lock them away where no one could appeal to their bloodline or their rights. He had thought it was a story, something old countries told to frighten unruly heirs. He had been wrong about that. "The court was told I had gone mad," he said, "that the beast beneath the castle was a creature summoned from the old dark places to protect the kingdom. They built an entire mythology around me, a monster story, something that would keep people afraid and obedient and grateful that King Alaric was the one holding the leash." "And the trial?" Lena asked quietly. "The women he sends down here." Something flickered in the gold eyes, something between guilt and grief. "He is not looking for a queen," Cale said. "He is looking for someone who can break the curse. The curse requires a specific condition to be lifted, an act that his own court scholars cannot fully decipher anymore. He sends women down here hoping that one of them will accidentally fulfill it. And then he can." He stopped. "Can what?" "Can control what comes out the other side." Lena understood then, with the cold clarity that comes to people who have had to be clever in places where cleverness was the only protection they had. If the curse broke and a prince walked out of that chamber, King Alaric needed someone loyal standing next to him, someone he owned, someone who would look at a crown and see a gift rather than justice. He had been sending women as bait, and whatever they experienced in this chamber, the terror, the madness, the silence afterward, was the curse reacting to the wrong kind of touch. "What is the right kind?" she asked. Cale looked at her for a long, careful moment. "I don't know," he said, "but when you walked down those stairs," he stopped, started again. "Something in the curse responded to you differently than it has to anyone else." The amber light pulsed 3 times in quick succession. Lena looked at the runes, then at the beast, then back at the runes. "Differently," she repeated carefully. "Differently," he confirmed. Above them the clock tower chimed the half-hour, 3.5 hours until dawn. Lena thought, "I am a kitchen orphan with no last name, sitting in a cage chamber with a cursed prince who has been imprisoned for 11 years, while the king who did it to him is sleeping comfortably 4 floors above my head." Then she thought, "What are you going to do about it?" And that second question was the one that changed everything. The runes had been glowing steadily since Lena sat down. But now, as the hour grew late and the silence between her and Kale grew comfortable rather than tense, the way silences do between people who have shared something honest, the runes began to pulse in patterns. She noticed it first as a rhythm, then as something more intentional. 3 pulses, a pause, 5 pulses, a pause, like breathing, like code. "What are they doing?" she asked. Kale looked at the floor with the expression of someone who has watched something for years and learned to stop expecting it to change. "They respond to proximity," he said. "To resonance? What does that mean?" "It means they haven't done that in 11 years. She stared at him. He met her eyes. "They respond when the curse recognizes something that could break it," he said. "A bloodline signature, a specific presence. Something the original spell was designed to react to. And they're reacting to me. Yes, I'm a kitchen maid." "I know what you appear to be," he said, with a gentleness that sat oddly in that rough voice. "What I am telling you is that the curse disagrees." Lena pulled her knees tighter to her chest. In the amber light, her hands looked strange. The same hands she had scrubbed dishes with every morning for 3 years. The same nails she could never get fully clean. The same faint scar on her left thumb from the bread knife incident of the previous winter. Nothing special, nothing bloodline worthy. And yet, "Tell me what you know about my background," she said. "Whatever the curse is responding to, it's not something I know about. I was brought to the castle at 6 years old. I don't know where I came from. I don't know who my parents were. I was just left." She said it plainly. She had long since made her peace with it, or at least constructed something that looked enough like peace that she had stopped examining it too closely. Kale's gold eyes were very still. "Where were you left?" he asked carefully. "At the castle gates. There was nothing on me, no note, no seal, no family marker. The head cook took me in because I was small enough to be useful and she had a weakness for strays." Lena allowed herself the smallest smile at that. "Her name was Marta. She died last year. She was the closest thing I had to a mother." "What year were you left?" Lena thought back. 11 years ago. I was 6, which would make—" She stopped. The number sat in the air between them. 11 years ago. The same year the curse was cast. The same year a prince was locked in a chamber and a king rewrote history. Kale was very still. "The Morn line," he said slowly, "had more than one branch. My father, King Ereld, had a younger sister, a princess who left the court before I was born, married a man from the northern reaches. They had a daughter." Lena's heart was doing something strange in her chest. "What happened to them?" she managed. "When Alaric moved against my claim, he moved against all of us," Kale said. "My father's line, my father's sister's line, anyone who could challenge him." He paused. "The official story is that they died in a border raid. A tragedy, unfortunate, the kind of story that ends inquiry. But you don't believe that." "I never believed it." His voice was rough with something old and banked. "A border raid. At the exact moment Alaric needed every alternative claim to disappear. The probability of coincidence." "What was their daughter's name?" Lena heard herself ask. Another long pause. "Elena," he said. "They called her Lena." The runes lit up. All of them. Every carved symbol on the floor of the chamber blazed amber gold at once, so bright that Lena had to shield her eyes, and the light poured through the iron bars of the cage like something alive, like something reaching, and she felt it before she understood it, a warmth that moved through her chest like a key turning in a long-sealed lock. Then it faded. The chamber returned to its quiet amber pulse. Lena lowered her arm. Kale was on his feet now, standing at the bars, and the expression on that massive, terrible, shadow-furred face was something she had no words for, a collision of something like grief and something like relief, and something so fragile she was afraid to name it. "The princess who was supposed to die 11 years ago," Lena said. Her voice was very steady. She was proud of that. "Yes. The girl who was left at the castle gate so she would be hidden in plain sight. A 6-year-old child placed in the most anonymous position possible," he said. where no one would think to look for a princess, where she would grow up invisible, safe. Who left me, she asked. Who knew? I don't know, he said, but someone in this castle has known who you are this entire time. Someone has been protecting you by keeping you small. Lena thought of Marta, the head cook who had taken her in without asking questions, who had taught her the castle's rhythms and its dangerous corners, and exactly which doors not to open, who had died last year, conveniently, horribly, before any of this could be explained. She thought of the east corridor that led to the beast's chamber. She thought of Princess Soriette, who had run through a door she should not have known about. She thought of a lock that had turned with very precise timing. I don't think I ended up in this chamber by accident, she said. Cale looked at her. No, he said. I don't think you did either. Above them, the clock tower chimed 4. 2 hours until dawn. Lena stood up. Her legs were stiff from the cold stone, and she stamped her feet to wake them up, and then she looked at the iron bars between her and the cursed prince who might be her cousin, and she said, Tell me everything about the curse, about what breaks it, about what Alaric is afraid of. Leave nothing out. That could take more than 2 hours. Then talk fast. And for the first time in 11 years, something that might have been a real smile moved across Cale's terrible face. The curse had been cast by a woman named Sarath. Cale said her name quietly, the way you say the name of something dangerous when you are not sure it can't still hear you. A blood mage, he said. Alaric's most trusted advisor. She's dead now, died 7 years ago, officially of old age, though I have my doubts about the timeline, but her workings don't require her presence to maintain. They're self-sustaining, anchored in the blood of the one who wears them, anchored in you. In me, the curse is a cage. It uses my own life to sustain itself. As long as I live, the curse persists. The implication of that hung in the air for a moment before Lena pushed through it. So Alaric can't simply kill you to end it. No, if I die, the curse consumes itself. What I am, what's trapped between human and beast, collapses. His jaw moved. It would destroy the chamber, possibly the lower citadel. Sarath built it to be a deterrent. Kill me and you bring down the castle, which is why he's kept you alive. Alive and trapped and useful as a story. His voice was very dry. The beast beneath the castle. The monster that requires a brave queen to tame him. A narrative that serves 3 purposes. Keeps the court in fear, keeps the kingdom obedient, and keeps him searching for the one thing that could actually end this safely. The curse break. Yes. Tell me the conditions, Lena said. He was quiet for a moment, as if organizing something he had thought about so many times it had worn grooves in his mind. Sarath was thorough, he said at last. She built in a way out, not out of mercy, but because a curse with no release valve eventually becomes unstable. Magic without an exit tears itself apart. He paused. The curse requires 3 things to break, and all 3 must occur within a single night between dusk and dawn. 1 attempt per year, which is why the trial is annual, why Alaric holds it every year at the winter solstice. What are the 3 things? First, a blood witness. Someone who shares the Morn bloodline must be present in the chamber and consciously acknowledge what they are. His gold eyes moved to her face. Not just be present, must know and accept their identity. Lena thought about what he had told her, about Elena, about a 6-year-old left at castle gates. What's the second? A choice made freely without coercion that places another's safety above the witness's own. He was watching her carefully now. Not performed, not calculated, genuinely free. And the third, a long, waited pause. The beast must be seen, he said, fully, without flinching, not the monster, not the creature, the person inside it, the one who was erased. He must be seen for what he actually is, by the blood witness, with full knowledge of everything he was and is and has done and failed to do. Lena let that settle. That's the one Alaric's women couldn't fulfill, she said. Not because they were afraid of you, because they didn't know who you actually were. They were looking at a monster. They were looking at a story, he said. A story Alaric told them. You cannot truly see someone you've already decided is something else. She looked at him now. really looked not at the shadow fur, not at the burning eyes, not at the claws or the scale or the wrongness of it. She looked at the face inside all of it, the one she could see if she stopped reacting and started paying attention. The jaw that set when he was trying not to show something. The way he held still when he was choosing words carefully. The exhaustion written so deeply into the lines of him that it had become structural. The way exhaustion does in people who have been carrying something for 11 years with no one to put it down in front of. "I see you," she said. The words were simple, direct, the most honest thing she had said all night. The runes responded again, not all at once this time, but in sequence, symbol by symbol, traveling outward from where she sat like a ripple across still water. Kale made a sound, not the grinding stone laugh from before, something smaller, something that cost more. "You said that too fast," he told her. "You've known me for 3 hours. I've known you for 3 hours and you've told me more truth than anyone in this castle has spoken in 11 years, she said. "That counts for something," she paused. "What happens when the curse breaks? What comes out the other side?" "Me," he said, "just me, whatever I was before put back together." He looked at his clawed hands. "I don't know in what shape. Sarath was not known for her precision, but you're still in there. I'm still in here. Then we figure out the shape afterward," Lena said. "One problem at a time." He stared at her. "You are remarkably calm," he said, "for someone who just discovered she might be a princess." "I am screaming internally," she said pleasantly. "I have just had a great deal of practice at not showing it." That almost smile again. The one that shifted his whole face. "Lena," he said, "there is something you should know before we discuss this further. Tell me. If the curse breaks tonight, if we somehow fulfill all 3 conditions before dawn, Alaric will know. The runes are connected to his court scholars, they monitor them. The moment the curse releases, he'll come for us." "He'll come for you," Kale corrected. "Whatever I am when I come out of this, if I can protect you." "Stop," she said. He stopped. "We discuss how to survive this together or we don't discuss it at all." She held his gaze across the iron bars. "Are those terms acceptable?" A beat. 2. "Yes," he said. "Good." She looked toward the stairs. "Now tell me about the scholars, and the castle guard, and every person in this citadel who would choose justice over Alaric if they knew the truth." His expression shifted into something she was beginning to recognize as Kale thinking with his whole self. "That," he said, "is a longer conversation than we have time for." "Then talk faster," she said again. They had a plan. It was not a good plan. Lena was the first to admit this. "The hole in it," she said, laying it out with her fingers against the cold stone floor the way she had seen the head cook organize kitchen schedules, "is Alaric." "The hole in it," Kale said, "is that you are one unarmed kitchen maid and I am behind iron bars." "That too." She didn't disagree. "What do we know about who's on duty tonight?" he thought. 11 years of listening to footsteps overhead had given him a scholar's knowledge of the castle's rhythms. He knew shift patterns. He knew which guards took bribes and which ones were true believers. He knew which court scholars had been uncomfortable with Alaric's version of history for years, and which had made their peace with it in exchange for comfortable positions. "Lord Fenwick," he said finally, "chief scholar. He was my tutor once before all this. He knows exactly what happened to me. He chose Alaric because he is a coward, but he has been a guilty coward for 11 years, which sometimes amounts to the same thing as a conscience." "Where is he tonight?" "He always attends the trial personally. Monitors the rune readings from the scholar's tower 2 floors above us." A pause. "He'll already know the runes activated differently tonight. Then he knows something is happening." "Yes. The question is whether that scares him into action or sends him running to Alaric." "Which way does a guilty coward run?" she asked. Kale considered this with the seriousness it deserved. When the thing he's afraid of is small and distant, he runs to power. When the thing he's afraid of is real and immediate and in the room with him, he might run toward what he actually believes. It's possible. Then we need to make it real and immediate. Lena looked toward the stairs. "What would Fenwick do if he saw the runes responding to me, if he knew who I was?" "He would recognize the bloodline signature. He helped Sereth design the curse. He knows what it looks for. Cale's jaw tightened. He would know that Alaric's plan has reached a point of no return, that if the curse breaks, the kingdom's entire manufactured history collapses. And would that make him help us or betray us? A long pause. I think, Cale said carefully, that Lord Fennec has been waiting 11 years for someone to make it worth it to do the right thing. He just needed someone to give him no other option. Above them, the sound of footsteps. Measured, deliberate, going the wrong direction for a guard rotation. Heading toward the stairs. That's him, Cale said. Lena stood. She straightened her apron, a purely automatic gesture, the kind of thing that happens when 3 years of castle service are buried in your bones and face the stairs. The footsteps descended. Lord Fennec was a small man with a large regret. Lena could read it in him the moment he came around the spiral of the stairs. The way he held himself, the stoop of someone who had been bowing under the weight of a bad decision for a decade. He was older than she had expected, white-haired, thin-wristed, carrying a glass orb that glowed with the same amber as the runes. His eyes went to the floor first, to the patterns of light, and even from across the chamber she could see him go pale. Then he saw her. He stopped on the last step, stared. His mouth opened and closed twice before he managed. You're not one of the trial candidates." "No," Lena said. "I'm the kitchen girl who accidentally locked herself in here. My name is Lena." She paused. "I'm told my full name might be Elena Morn. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that." The orb in Fennec's hands blazed. He almost dropped it. That can't." He looked from her to the runes to Cale behind the bars and back to her, and his whole face did something complicated and painful. "You were supposed to be dead." "I gathered," she said. "I'm not, which is causing certain people problems, I imagine." "Alaric has 3 scholars monitoring the rune readings tonight," Fennec said, and it came out fast, urgent, the voice of someone making a decision in real time. "When they see the bloodline activation pattern, he'll come down here himself," Cale said from behind the bars. Fennec turned toward the cage. The color had gone out of his face entirely. "Prince Cale, Lord Fennec." Cale's voice was level and dry. "It's been 11 years. You look well. I look like this." The old scholar flinched. "I didn't know or stop it." Cale's gold eyes were steady. "Which is worse, do you think?" Silence. The orb trembled in Fennec's hands. "Both," the old man said at last in a voice that had lost all its polish. "Both are worse." It was not enough. It was also, in some way that Lena could not quite articulate, but could feel with the clarity of someone who had learned to read power dynamics from the very bottom of every room, precisely enough. "Tell me what Alaric is planning," she said. "Not what he told the court, what he's actually after." Fennec looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat down on the bottom step, as if his legs had made a decision without consulting him. "He doesn't want the curse broken," the old scholar said. "He never did. The trial isn't about finding a queen, it's about control." He pressed his hands together. "If someone breaks the curse accidentally, someone random, someone without bloodline claim, Cale walks out human again but with no standing. No proof of who he was. No one who could corroborate his identity after 11 years in that form. Alaric could have him committed to an institution, declared a madman, erased again. But if a Morn blood witness breaks it," Lena said slowly, "then Cale walks out with a corroborating witness who carries the same bloodline claim. 2 surviving members of the true royal line, both with undeniable standing." Fennec's voice was bleak. "The throne becomes contested in a way that cannot be quietly suppressed. So he was looking for the blood witness," she said. "All those women were decoys, tests, ways of monitoring whether anyone with Morn blood was still alive and findable." Fennec looked at the floor. "I helped him design the rune protocols. I told myself it was just scholarship." "And now?" Lena asked. The old man looked up at her. His eyes were wet. "And now," he said, "a dead girl is alive in front of me, and a prince I helped cage is asking me which way I run." "Which way do you run?" she asked. From above, the sound of doors. Rapid footsteps, more than one pair. Alaric was already moving. "Lord Fennec," Lena said quietly. Which way? The old man stood up, straightened his robes, lifted his orb. Tell me what you need, he said. Lord Fennec moved faster than Lena expected from a man of his age and recent confession. He crossed the chamber in quick, purposeful strides, pulled a ring of keys from somewhere inside his robe, and held them up to the amber light. These are the master keys for the lower citadel, he said, including this chamber. You've had those this entire time, Cale said from behind the bars. Yes, and you're only using them now. Yes. Fennec met the gold eyes without flinching, and it seemed to cost him something real. I know. Cale was quiet for a moment. Then, the cage key, not the chamber door. Fennec's hand hovered over the ring. Prince Cale, if I open the cage before the curse is broken, I'm aware of what I am without the containment runes holding the worst of it at bay, Cale said. I'm not asking you to release me. I'm asking you to trust me enough to unlock the door and let me choose not to open it. A beat. Fennec inserted the key, turned it. The massive lock opened with a sound like a judgment. The barred door swung inward. Cale did not move through it. He stood at the threshold, inside the cage, and the amber light from the runes pulsed more frantically than it had all night, the curse reacting to the opening, to the possibility, to the presence of the blood witness 3 feet away. Lena could feel it on her skin now, that warmth, like standing close to a fire. How much time? She asked Fennec. Alaric's scholars will have already sent word. The king himself. A sound from above made them all look up. He's moving faster than I expected. Of course he is, Lena said. He's been managing this situation for 11 years. He knows exactly what the rune patterns mean. She looked at the cage door, standing open, and the prince standing inside it by choice, and made a calculation. The conditions. First, blood witness, consciously acknowledging their identity. She turned to face the runes, to face the chamber, to let it be real, all of it, the name she had been given and lost and just had returned to her, the family she had never known, the year spent alone at the castle gate, the life lived in plain sight in a place where no one was looking for her because they thought she was dead. My name is Elena Morn, she said clearly into the amber-lit air. I am of the blood of the Morn royal line. I know what I am and I accept it. The runes blazed. 14 of the 22 symbols lit simultaneously, and the light was so bright that Fennec pressed his sleeve over his eyes. Cale did not look away. He was watching her with those burning gold eyes, and something in them was changing, not fading, not dimming, but deepening like a fire when you give it good wood. Second condition, he said quietly. A choice made freely without coercion that places another's safety above the witness's own. She turned to him. I know. You can't plan it, he said. It has to be. I know, she said again. So stop telling me about it and let something happen. Above them, the door to the corridor opened. 3 guards, armored, weapons drawn, came down the stairs. Behind them, in a midnight blue robe that probably cost more than Lena's last 5 years of wages, King Alaric of Eldoria descended the spiral steps with the practiced calm of someone who has managed crises before and expects to manage this one too. He was a handsome man. That was the first thing she noticed. Not the crown, he wasn't wearing one, not at this hour. Just the robe, the rings, the posture of absolute certainty that every room he entered belonged to him. He took in the chamber, the open cage door, Fennec standing with his keys, Lena on her feet in the middle of the rune circle. His eyes stopped on her, then moved to Cale, then back to her. And in that movement, Lena saw it, the thing beneath the king's certainty. Not fear exactly, calculation. The rapid assessment of someone who has built a very careful structure and is rapidly determining which parts of it are still standing. Well, he said, the kitchen girl. King Alaric, she said. You know who you are. Not a question. I do. Then you know this doesn't end well for you. He clasped his hands in front of him. I had your mother killed, girl, your father, 2 cousins who hadn't even come of age yet. I am very thorough, and I have been at this a great deal longer than you have. He nodded to the guards. They moved toward her. And there it was, the choice, the moment, arriving not as something she had to calculate or manufacture, but as something simple and clear and immediate. She could step aside, let them pass, and they would go for Kale. He was the greater threat. He was behind an open cage door, or she could stand where she was. She stood where she was. She spread her arms, and she stood in front of the open cage door, and she looked at the king of Eldoria, and she said very clearly, "You'll have to go through me." The runes erupted. Not gradually, not building. All 22 symbols blazed at once, white gold. So bright the shadows fled the chamber entirely. And the warmth she had felt all night became something else, became a sound, became a pressure, became the feeling of something enormous held too long in a space too small suddenly, finally, beginning to release. She heard Kale behind her make a sound that was not quite human and not quite beast and was, somehow, entirely himself. The guard stopped. Alaric's composed face cracked at the edges. "Stop the runes," he snapped at Fennec. "I can't," the old scholar said, and for the first time in 11 years his voice was perfectly steady. "It's already begun." The light in the chamber moved. That was the only way Lena could describe it afterward, not spreading, not growing, but moving, with the deliberate purposefulness of something that knew exactly where it was going. It traveled up from the rune-carved floor, through the stones, through the air, and it concentrated at the open door of the cage, at the threshold where she stood with her arms spread, and a king's guards 2 steps away, and the entire future of a kingdom balanced on something as absurd and irreducible as a kitchen maid refusing to move. She felt Kale before she heard him, a warmth at her back, the sound of breathing that was changing, deepening, evening out, losing the rough edge of something held in an unnatural shape too long. And then his hands appeared at her shoulders, enormous, clawed, trembling, and she understood what the third condition required. Not just to see him, for him to let himself be seen. "Kale," she said, without turning. "I'm looking." A long, terrible, suspended moment. Then he stepped through the door. He stood beside her rather than behind her, and she turned her head and she looked at everything she had been looking at all night, but now with the runes blazing and the light building and the curse working its way loose from the inside, and she did not flinch. The shadow fur was flickering, like a fire going out, but in reverse, like something burning its way inward rather than outward. Underneath it, in the spaces between flickers, she could see skin, human skin, dark and warm and alive in a way the curse form was not. She saw his face without the layers of beast shadow. It was a good face, tired and young and old at the same time, the way faces are when they have held too much for too long. Familiar in the same way her own face was familiar, the same bloodline architecture, the same shape of cheekbone, the same distance between eye and brow. Cousin, she thought, and hello. "I see you," she said again. Kale Aldrich Morn, Crown Prince of Eldoria, the one they tried to erase. The light detonated, not destructively, not the way Sarath had designed it as a weapon, differently. The way something detonates when the pressure that has been building for 11 years finally, completely releases. A wave of amber gold that moved outward from the cage door in all directions at once, washing over the guards, over Alaric, over Fennec, over every stone and shadow in the chamber. Lena closed her eyes. When she opened them, the runes were dark, all 22 dark and cold for the first time in 11 years. And standing beside her where the beast had been was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what remained of clothing that had not survived 11 years particularly well. Dark-skinned, with those same gold eyes that had burned in the beast's face, same color, same intensity, but human now, warm now, full of something that had no name in any of the 6 languages Lena didn't speak but might have been called. Free, he looked at his hands, human hands, long-fingered and steady and real. He looked at Lena. "Hello," he said in a voice that was low and rough and finally entirely his own. "Hello," she said. King Alaric moved. He was not a man who accepted events. He was a man who managed them, and the scene in front of him was not something he was willing to let run its own course. He pulled something from inside his robe, small, dark, a blade, the kind of thing that could be explained later as self-defense or an accident or a misunderstanding. And he moved. Fennec was faster. For a small man with a large regret and 11 years of waiting for a moment worth the cost of his conscience, Lord Fenwick moved with surprising speed. He stepped between Alaric and the two people standing in the ruins of the curse, and he said, in a voice that carried every year of guilt and calculation, and finally, something that had cracked open inside him. No, Alaric stopped. The two guards had not moved during the light event. Lena looked at them, really looked, the way she had learned to look at people tonight, past the uniform and the assignment to whatever was actually in there. And she saw two young men whose expressions had shifted from controlled professionalism to something much more human and much less certain. "Stand down," she said to them, not a command, an invitation. "What happens next is going to be easier for everyone if you're on the right side of it." The guards looked at each other. They looked at Alaric. They looked at the dark runes on the floor and the man standing free of the cage and the woman who had apparently broken an 11-year curse while wearing a kitchen apron. They stepped back. Alaric turned to her. He had not panicked, she had to give him that. He was still assessing, still calculating, still looking for the version of this that came out in his favor. "What do you want?" he asked. Lena looked at Cale. He looked at her. "The truth," she said. "That's all. The true history of what happened 11 years ago, recorded and witnessed and made permanent. Cale's identity restored, his rights restored, and then," she paused, "then we figure out what justice looks like and we do it properly with people watching. You're asking me to give you everything. I'm asking you to stop taking things that weren't yours," she said. Silence. Alaric looked at the two guards who had stepped back, at the scholar who had stepped forward, at the young man standing with his first real breath of free air in 11 years, at the girl with flowers still worked into the creases of her palms who had somehow become the center of everything. He made a sound, not quite a laugh. "You're very young," he said. "I'm aware," she said. "Do we have an agreement?" Dawn came with a kind of reluctance. As if the night had known, it was carrying something important and was not ready to let it go. The first gray light reached the narrow windows of the lower citadel, just as Fenwick finished the preliminary documentation. Pages of careful scholar's script that recorded, in the formal language of Eldorian royal record, exactly what had occurred in the chamber below the citadel between midnight and dawn on the winter solstice. He had been writing for 2 hours. His hand was steady the entire time. Alaric had not agreed. Not with the ease of someone choosing surrender, with the careful compliance of someone assessing options and finding them limited. The two guards who had stepped back had, it turned out, known the names of the people with whom they served, and the castle families who had quietly wondered about the beast's origin for years. They had not moved against Fenwick. They had, in fact, sent word up to the guard rotation. By the time the sun's edge appeared on the horizon, there were 11 guards in the lower corridor. 8 of them had stationed themselves on the side of the door that faced the chamber, rather than the side that faced the stairs. Small things, but small things, as Lena had learned in years of kitchen work, were usually the thing that decided everything. Cale stood at the narrow window of the antechamber where they had all retreated from the main chamber, watching the light. He had not said much in the hours since the curse broke. He held his own hands periodically, as if reacquainting himself with them, which made something in Lena's chest do a long, slow ache. "How do you feel?" she asked him. He considered the question with the same thoroughness he seemed to bring to everything. Like someone who fell from a great height 11 years ago and has only just reached the ground. A pause. "I don't mean that as complaint. I mean I stopped falling, that's something." "It's a lot," she said. "Yes," he looked at her. "Are you all right?" She thought about it honestly. "I found out I'm a princess, watched a curse break, confronted a king, and haven't slept. So, no, but also yes." She paused. "That probably doesn't make sense." "It makes sense," he said quietly. In the main chamber, Alaric had been joined by his Lord Chancellor, an older man named Graves who had arrived with the same expression one uses when discovering that the foundation of one's house has moved slightly but significantly, and now must be reckoned with. Graves had read Fenwick's preliminary documentation. He had looked at Cale. He had looked at Lena. He had looked at the dark runes on the floor. Then he had gone to speak quietly with Alaric. Lena watched that conversation through the antechamber doorway. She could not hear the words, but she could read the posture. A king and his chancellor working out the mechanics of surviving something neither of them had planned for. He'll try to negotiate, Kale said from beside her. He was watching too. Alaric doesn't concede, he bargains. What does he have left to bargain with? His knowledge of the kingdom's current state, its alliances, its debts. Things that took 11 years to construct and that would take years to untangle without him. Kale's jaw set. He'll offer continuity, stability. He'll suggest that a sudden power transition creates vulnerability. And is he wrong? She asked. Not defensively, genuinely. He's not entirely wrong, Kale admitted, which is what makes it complicated. She appreciated that, the honesty of it, the willingness to hold two things that were both true. What do you want? She asked him. Not what justice requires. What do you actually want? He was quiet for a long time. I want my name back, he said. I want the record corrected. I want the people who helped him, the ones who had a choice and made the wrong one, to face what they did. He paused. I don't want to spend the next 11 years in a revenge war. I've been in a cage. I don't want to build another one. That's wise, she said. That's exhausted, he said. I'm told they can look similar, she laughed. It surprised them both. She hadn't realized she still had it in her after the night, but there it was, real and a little helpless. And Kale looked at her when she laughed with an expression she wasn't ready to examine too closely yet. Later, she told herself. That's for later. Lord Graves crossed the chamber toward them. He stopped at the antechamber doorway, hands folded, and assessed Kale the way an old official assesses a problem he was partly responsible for. Prince Kale, he said. Lord Graves. The king would like to propose terms. His eyes moved to Lena. Both of you. What kind of terms? She asked. Recognition, restoration of record, a formal transition period of 3 years during which existing governance remained stable, with Prince Kale reinstated as crown prince and given full access to court and administration. At the end of 3 years, a full succession review. Alaric stays in power, Kale said flatly, as a managed transition, not a permanent arrangement. And what guarantees? Documentation, Lena said. Both men looked at her. Everything Fennec wrote tonight, signed by every witness in this building, copied in triplicate, with copies sent immediately to the heads of the 3 oldest noble families in Eldoria and the foreign ambassadors currently at court. She paused. If Alaric agrees to that, to making it real and witnessed and irrevocable, then a 3-year transition is a conversation. Graves studied her. You've thought about this. I've had a long night. He nodded once and returned to the king. Kale looked at her sideways. You're going to be very inconvenient for the people who like things to be simple. I've been inconvenient my whole life, she said. I might as well be inconvenient at scale. The sun was up now, fully, undeniably. The castle above them would be waking, servants, courtiers, guards, the 32 women who had come down those stairs and come back changed and never spoken of it. A kingdom that had been told a story about a monster for 11 years, now a few hours away from learning a different story. Lena thought about the kitchen, about cold stone floors and bread flour and Marta's rough hands teaching her how to survive in a place that did not know what it had. She thought, I didn't know either. She thought, we know now. The documents were signed at mid-morning. Not in the chamber below the citadel. They had all left that space by unspoken agreement, as if it belonged to something else now, something that needed time to settle. They gathered instead in the Eastern Council room, where the light came through the windows at a long winter angle and turned everything it touched to warm amber. Lena noticed that, the amber light, felt it like a reminder. 11 witnesses signed. 3 of them were the castle guards who had stepped back the night before. 2 were court scholars who had arrived with Lord Graves and, reading the documentation with the careful attention of people whose entire professional lives were built on precision, had gone very quiet and then picked up pens. Fennec signed last, with the slow deliberateness of someone completing something that had been incomplete for a very long time. Alaric signed third. Not first. He had tried to position himself first, and Cale had simply said, without heat, "The documentation is in historical order, uncle. You'll sign after the witnesses have confirmed the record." And Alaric had, after a pause long enough to make his position clear, complied. That was how it started, not with triumph, not with drama, with a pen and a morning and a room full of people who had chosen, finally, to say what they knew was true. Cale, for his part, had been given clothes. Court clothes, produced from somewhere by Graves, who was apparently a man of significant practical capability underneath the official formality. They didn't fit perfectly. Cale had the build of someone who had been something else for 11 years. But they were real, and the effect of seeing him in them, standing upright and recognized and named, was something that Lena kept having to look away from because looking at it directly felt like looking at the sun. The copies were sealed and messengered before noon. By afternoon, the castle knew. News in a place like a royal citadel does not travel, it erupts. By mid-afternoon, every servant, every guard, every courtier, every person who had spent 11 years serving a king, and believing his story was moving through the corridors with the particular electric restlessness of a population whose understanding of everything has just fundamentally shifted. Lena moved through it in a way that felt strange, not invisible anymore, not the kitchen girl below the stairs, but not yet whatever she was becoming either. She found Cale in the late afternoon, in the garden where the winter roses had given up everything except their thorns. He was sitting on a stone bench, looking at nothing in particular with the focused attention of someone who had not had empty time in 11 years and was not sure what to do with it. "Strange day," she offered, sitting beside him. "Strange year," he said, "strange decade." "You're allowed to not be fine, you know," she said. "After everything," he looked at her. "I know," a pause. "I'm not fine. I'm processing. There are things I don't know how to do anymore. Simple things. I don't know how to be in a room without monitoring all the exits. I don't know how to sleep in a bed. I don't know how to talk to people without calculating threat." He stopped. "I assume that gets better." "I think it does," she said. "I think it has to with time." "Do you?" He turned to look at her. "Have things gotten better with time for you?" She thought about it. The kitchen work, the invisible years. Marta teaching her things about the castle's dangerous doors without ever explaining why. "I think I was okay," she said slowly. "I think being okay isn't the same as being fine, but it's something real. And then tonight happened, which is a significant upgrade to okay," she paused, "or a significant complication. The jury's still out." "The jury," he said, "is going to be deliberating for some time." "Yes," she looked at the winter roses. "What happens now? Genuinely." "The 3-year transition begins. I spend 3 years learning to run a kingdom from the inside formally, with Alaric nominally in position, but with every meaningful decision requiring my countersign and Graves monitoring the whole arrangement." He paused. "It will be uncomfortable. For everyone. For everyone." He was quiet for a moment. "And you?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I know what I'm not. I'm not going back to the kitchens, not because there's anything wrong with the kitchens, but because I think whatever comes next requires me to be someone who knows what she is, and I'm only just starting to figure that out." "What do you know so far?" he asked. She considered. "I know I'm a Morn. I know I kept my head in a situation that would have broken a lot of people. I know I can talk to a monster without flinching, which probably means I can talk to courtiers, which is a similar skill set." She paused. "I know I want the truth of what happened to become permanent, not just documented, known. I want the 32 women who came down those stairs to know what was done to them and why. I want their names recorded." Cale looked at her. "That," he said quietly, "is a political program." "Is it?" She thought about it. "I suppose it is." "It's also right," he said. They sat in the winter garden in the late afternoon light, and it was not comfortable exactly. Comfort required a certain kind of ease that neither of them had yet, but it was real. Two people who had found each other in the most improbable way, through a locked door and a kneeling beast and a night that had cracked the world open, sitting together in the remains of it. "Lena," he said. "Kale. Thank you." Simple. Direct, the most honest kind of sentence. For staying in the chamber, for not doing the sensible thing and screaming. She looked at him, at the gold eyes that were human now but still burning, still that same particular intensity that had looked at her across the bars all night. "I'm not going to pretend I wasn't afraid," she said. "I was absolutely terrified." "I know. But you were kneeling," she said. "And something that has been imprisoned for 11 years and still chooses to kneel instead of rage, that's not a monster. That's someone who hasn't given up on the idea that things can be different." She paused. "I didn't want to leave someone like that alone." The light shifted. The winter afternoon moved toward evening. He reached out carefully, with the same deliberateness he had brought to everything all night, and took her hand. Not romantically. Not yet. With the particular tenderness of someone who knows they are holding something real and does not want to mishandle it. Her hand in his hand human now, warm, the claws gone. "I'm glad you followed the princess," he said. "I'm glad she ran in the wrong direction," she said. And somewhere in the castle above them, in rooms that had held 32 silences and one truth, the kingdom of Eldoria moved into the first honest evening it had known in 11 years. 3 years later, in the same winter garden where they had sat among the thornless by then roses, the kingdom of Eldoria signed a new charter. Not a coronation, those were coming in their own time. A charter. A document that listed by name all 32 women who had been sent into a chamber as unknowing instruments of a king's ambition. Each name recorded, each woman acknowledged. The truth made permanent in law. Kale's name had been in the public record for 2 years by then. Crown Prince, rightful heir, the man who had been the beast. And Elena Morn stood at his side when the charter was sealed, wearing no crown and carrying no title beyond the one the bloodline gave her, because titles, she had decided, could wait until she was certain they meant something. He looked at her the way he had looked at her across iron bars on the longest night either of them had ever survived, as if she was someone worth kneeling for. "Ready?" he asked. She pressed her seal to the document. "I was born ready," she said. "I just didn't know it yet. And that, beautiful people, is no princess could survive the beast." Then a poor orphan walked in. A girl with no name, no crown, and no plan walked into the most dangerous room in the kingdom and walked out having changed everything. Because sometimes the person who breaks the curse isn't the one everyone was waiting for. Sometimes it's the one nobody saw coming. If this story found its way to your heart tonight, I need you to do one thing before you close your eyes. Hit that subscribe button. Stories like this one live and die by the people willing to show up for them, and you showing up. That means everything. Drop a comment below and tell me, who was your favorite character tonight? The cursed prince, the kitchen girl who refused to flinch, or the guilty old scholar who finally found his spine? I read every single one. And if you want more stories where the girl with nothing turns out to be everything, more curses broken, more thrones shaken, more love built in the places nobody thought to look, make sure your notifications are on so you never miss a single one. This is Nora Mafia Romance Stories. I'll see you in the next one.